Hello, freak bitches.
That's the problem in psychiatry, is there are no real biological markers. They're trying to use radiographic studies like SPECT scans, MRIs, PET scans, and what have you, as rationale for starting people on medication. But there's absolutely, in the biomarker or the biomarker panel that we have, there's a direct correlation between someone having had head trauma, regardless if it was mild or a blast trauma like Andrew had, or a slip and fall, or someone coming up and hitting you behind the head, or MMA, or boxers, or Muay Thai. And there's absolutely zero that they use to regulate what they're doing. It says, okay, today's Thursday, let's try this drug, or this is Friday, or else this month we're giving you this satchel of meds, as many of the vets have come up and told me, depending upon the day of the week, dictated what groupings of medications they were given. And
But let's break it down for people. What do you feel is the underlying cause of all this that's related to TBI?
Okay. Great question. And the answer is, number one, from the head trauma, it elicits chemical changes in the brain that we call inflammation. And this inflammation leads to disruption of chemical processes. It's like, the old alkaline batteries or the car batteries where we used to put distilled water into it. Well, if you put Coca-Cola in it, it totally changes the ability of electrons to be conducted, just like in the brain. So the chemistry of the brain is altered by the inflammation, and it starts shutting down systems so that the nerves in the left side of the brain can't talk to the right side, or the frontal lobe of the brain can't talk to the temporal lobe of the brain. So you have disruption of executive function, which is your ability to make correct decisions about things, right and wrong. Why do we have over 1 million veterans incarcerated? And that's because they can't make the right, correct decisions about how to respond to an innocuous, approach by an individual that they don't know. And they respond by assault, or with physical or anger, or yelling at people, and that leads them into jail or into incarceration. So anyway, the inflammation leads to hormonal deficiencies in the brain. And what we found is that since 1986, Dr. Bellew out of Paris found that we have enzyme systems that take cholesterol and convert it into hormones that actuate and regulate our brain function, from schizophrenia to ALS to Parkinson's disease to bipolar to all the different disorders. There was a recent article that I sent out to our journal group, and Andrew's in it, and it was about management of neuroinflammation, brain inflammation, to treat psychiatric diseases. And in the past 6 months, we've been starting to see a lot of articles talking specifically about inflammation creating all these things that we're trying to treat with medications that are ineffective. Last month, had a class in Arizona, and I presented a group of articles, and one of the key articles was the fact that they found people with atypical depression. That's depression that doesn't respond to traditional medication. So you're on a whole bunch, 13 medications, and you're still depressed. So they found in 61% of these people who were still depressed with atypical depression that they had growth hormone deficiency. And then when they replaced the growth hormone, within 1 to 2 months, their depression disappeared, and they had some beneficial side effects. They slept better. They had more mental energy. They were socially more adaptable, and their reactive scores that creates, an assault situation, they were calm. Someone said boo to them, and they said, oh, boo to you, as opposed to getting into their face. So it's a very clear, and it's becoming clearer and clearer in the literature around the world now. We've been doing this since 2004, and the inflammation is really the problem. So unfortunately, there is no specific medication. They talk about use of aspirin and ibuprofen in things like Alzheimer's disease, which is an inflammatory disease. I know I shared it with you in the past that if a football player has one major concussion on the field, he's 19 times at greater risk of developing Alzheimer's between 30 and 49 years of age, because it's an inflammatory illness. It's not, genetics by itself. There are people with genetic predisposition to it because they generate this thing called beta amyloid. But trauma, any kind of trauma to the head, can elicit increased production of beta amyloid.